Harry's Wife, part 67.12, in the basement with Prince Andrew. Not a place many of you would want to find yourself, particularly if it's rumoured of his predilection for interest in teenage girls. But two people find themselves joining Prince Andrew in the basement. We turn to Newsweek, an article by Jack Royston, the headline of which is "Prince Harry Less Popular Than Prince Andrew Among UK Boomers." Prince Harry is less popular among British baby boomers than Prince Andrew after a series of bombshells about the royal family. The Duke of Sussex popularity with people born between 1946 and 1964 has sunk to 12% in a new poll. His uncle, Prince Andrew, is just above on 13%, alongside Harry's wife, also on 13%. The trio occupied the three bottom spots in a survey that measures the popularity of 15 members of the royal family. The news comes despite allegations that Prince Andrew had sex with a trafficking victim of the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew denies the allegations. Imagine that. Imagine that you find yourself less popular than somebody who's been hanging out with a pedo. How would that make you feel? And imagine that you are alongside that individual, the arrogant buffoon that Andrew is. And if you want to listen more about his dissection as a narcissist, listen to A Very Royal Narcissist Part 5. But this is not good news at all. Now, of course, it's a relatively narrow part of the population, but it still demonstrates the depths to which they've sunk, or one might argue that they never really got out of the basement to begin with. Harry certainly did enjoy popularity. He was often known as the Playboy Prince. The people rather liked his kind of madcap approach to life, that he would make occasional idiotic judgments, but generally was well liked. He was seen as a brave and capable individual that threw himself into charity work, supported his brother, and was well liked by the British public. And then, as mentioned, along came a spider. And those of you who have had involvement with a narcissist, either having been ensnared yourself or seen somebody that you care and love about being ensnared by a narcissist, will know just how much this impacts. Somebody in the comments section on yesterday's videos wrote a rather witty comment about how Harry's scar tissue had been removed, and along came Harry's wife and poured her own particular poison into the existing childhood wound caused by Harry's loss of his mother. It was an apt comment. And it does demonstrate that, notwithstanding, of course, the vulnerabilities that Harry had following the loss of his mother, and, of course, speculation about who his father was, and so forth, that he appeared to have become reasonably well adjusted. Of course, that vulnerability will always remain with him. And who is always going to exploit that? A fellow empath? No. A normal? Possibly. A narcissist? Absolutely. We will always use vulnerabilities against our victims. We sniff them out. If you, unfortunately, tell us about the fact that you were abused as a child in the early stages of your courtship and your seduction by the narcissist, it'll be thrown back at you at a later juncture. It'll be used against you. If you talk about the fact that you're frightened of spiders or snakes or the dark, it'll be used against you. If you explain that you've got post-traumatic stress disorder as a consequence of a previous abusive relationship, it'll be used against you. If you let slip that many of your previous relationships have been abusive, and that you allude to particular types of abuse that you find particularly problematic to deal with, let's say, for example, silent treatments, it will be used against you. The aware narcissist listens out for these things, stores it, and actively makes a note to use it against you at a later juncture. The unaware narcissist doesn't store it with a view to using it consciously against you, but it is stored by the narcissism. The narcissism absorbs the information, puts it away, and then returns to it at a later juncture when you're being devalued, throw it back at you. And Harry's wife is no different. She didn't learn of his vulnerability and then sit there, rubbing her hands together, cackling, saying, I know, now I know this about him, I'll use it against him. No, her narcissism did it in an unconscious manner for the purposes of enabling it to use it against him, to assert control over him, and also in both a benign and malign way. The benign way is, of course, I understand your pain. It must be so troubling for you to have experienced all of that. I will heal you. I will help you. You need to talk about it more. You need to get it out in the open. It's then used in a malign way in terms of your family's never really supported you about the loss of your mother. You shouldn't trust them. I'm the one that you can trust. And then, of course, it will also be used in a malign way in sustained devaluation by mocking him about it, using the loss of a mother as a means of triangulation. Such things are not off limits when it comes to our manipulation of individuals. And therefore that vulnerability has been used against him. However, notice the difference, as I've explained before, that notwithstanding the existence of this vulnerability, he was getting on with life and was well liked. And now, because a certain somebody has come along, his popularity has plummeted. Blinded to the grip of the manipulation that he's in, blinded to how his own behaviours have become influenced, that he's making repeated mistaken judgments, poor moves, speaking about things which he ought not to do, his popularity plummets, and that of his wife also, and to such an extent that it has them sat alongside and beneath within a particular section of the population in the United Kingdom, down there in the basement. What a dark and murky place that must be. Now, again, how might that impact upon Harry's wife? Well, she may not be aware of the survey, but if she were, she would deflect from it and dismiss it. That's what the racists would think. Those boomers, they don't understand a modern gal like me. They're not woke. They're not welcome in the pages of Wokepedia. They will be dismissed as racist bigots. Nothing to do with the fact that their judgment is based upon how they perceive the behaviours and nothing to do with the skin colour. No. Nothing to do with the fact that they recognise the way that somebody has behaved and deem it inappropriate, unacceptable, unpleasant. And it's nothing to do with making a judgment about who that person is. It's based upon what their behaviours are. And therefore, she can't see this because the narcissism will not let her. She lacks that self-reflection to think, oh, my popularity has plummeted. Why could that be? Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm causing offence. This is a bit of a wake-up call. My level of popularity is akin to somebody who's been hanging around with a convicted paedophile. Fucking hell. I need to sort this out. How on earth did I let myself sleepwalk into this? That won't happen, will it? Instead, poll, we can make up anything with a poll. Well, if it's true, well, they're all just bigoted. Do a poll amongst the woke people. Let's find out what they have to say. Well, interestingly, the article continues as it tells us that British pollster YouGov conducts rolling surveys and grouped its data from April, May and June to produce the rankings, with the most recent sample made up of around 1,500 UK adults. Queen Elizabeth II is the most popular royal among baby boomers, with 82% of those surveyed having a positive opinion of her. And quite rightly too. She does a sterling job in difficult circumstances. She's followed by Kate Middleton on 78%. Now, were Harry's wife to be made aware of that, there would be much wailing and gnashing of teeth as her nemesis, the radiant, the beautiful, the classy Kate Middleton, as people would describe her. This would adversely impact upon Harry's wife. It would wound her to know that her nemesis is regarded with so many percentage points higher than her. She on 13, Kate on 78. A huge 65 percentage point gulf. Massive. Of course, she may not know about the poll, but if she did know about it, such news would wound her. The article continues, Princess Anne and Prince William came next, both on 71%. So, let's take a moment. The combined percentages of Team Cambridge, 149, combined percentages of Team Sussex, 25. That's a rout. And again, were they to know about that, Harry's wife would be particularly wounded by this result. In the poll for adults of all ages, Harry's wife's popularity increased to 32%, and Harry's rose to 31%. Prince Andrew was left behind in the dungeon on 10%. So when taken across all ages, the situation improves somewhat. However, the three still occupied the bottom three spots on the poll. The Queen was at number 1, 76%, followed by William, 72%, and Kate, 64%. So in effect, both Harry and his wife remain in the basement with Prince Andrew, whilst the Queen, William, and Kate top the polls. Double whammy of wounding. The fact that essentially two nemesises, William and Kate, are up there in second and third, that would wound, and the fact that they themselves, Team Sussex, are down in the basement, wallowing fairly close to Prince Andrew amongst all ages. Harry and Andrew occupy similar roles in the royal family. Both were born the spare, second son with an older brother who was direct heir to the throne. Both served in the military and were deployed to war zones. The Duke of Sussex appears to be sliding the YouGov poll, with 45% of British adults surveyed saying they liked him in March and 40% in April. Harry's wife's rating seems to have rallied slightly, however, after scoring 29% in April and 31% in March, according to the polling company. Harry's tumble has come during a period of repeated criticisms of his family, starting with the couple's interview with Oprah Winfrey, which was broadcast on March the 7th. In May, Harry told the Armchair Expert podcast he had experienced genetic pain from his upbringing with Prince Charles. Later, the same month, he accused the royal family of total neglect over his pleas for help dealing with the media. Of course, collateral consequences of the behaviour of Harry and Harry's wife. She drives him to make the disclosures, puppeting him, and her narcissism has no due regard for how that will impact in the aftermath, but what it does in the moment, and it's showing. The cack-handed disclosures in the bombshell interview, the repeated mud pies thrown at the royal family, are causing collateral consequences. Now, of course, this is all about the poll in the United Kingdom. We don't have any information to hand. Certainly I've not seen it with regard to their standing within the United States. But from anecdotal reports from you, good listeners, it doesn't appear that they're particularly popular there. And of course, they're trying to manufacture a popularity. And what they're doing is they are digging and then throwing the earth back on top so it slides back down on themselves. And that's typical of the type of narcissist that she is, that she takes an action in the moment which she thinks addresses the problem, only then for the collateral consequence to make it even worse. And that's indicative of how particularly mid-range narcissists and lesser narcissists have that haphazard life, that they take action in the moment, driven by their unconscious narcissism to achieve fuel and control, and it works brilliantly. But then it leads to a collateral consequence thereafter: loss of job, loss of relationship, loss of friendship, monetary problems, health issues, and so on and so forth. And this is what is being evidenced here. In the attempt to assert control over people on an international and global scale, the more that they do, the less popular they become. There's a combination of taking certain actions which people view as inappropriate, unnecessary, and downright disgusting, and also, quite simply, fatigue from them. They appear on a daily basis in the publications driven by their PR machine. The more that they do that, the more tired people will become. That will threaten control, and Harry's wife will need to issue yet more PR releases, causing people to become even more fed up of them, highlighting more hypocrisies, meaning people become even more tired of them, detract and criticise, threatening control further. And so, a downward spiral has begun. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.